You! G'day guys. Hope you're all doing nothing but swell. It may have been not so long since my last upload, but I tell you, bloody what, it's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've been filming. You can probably tell by the length of my freak flag back here. That'll be your little time gradient on how much time has passed. There's a new addition to the shop. It's right here. It's this thing. It is a 1975 Chevrolet C10 long bed. Loves a long bed. Lots of people prefer the short bed because they consider them to be a better looking truck. I actually prefer the look of a long bed. Looks like a proper old pickup. And one of the greatest things about this is I can fit full wheelbase Harleys in the back of it, which makes my life a whole lot easier when I'm picking up and dropping off people's broom brooms. Now, there's quite a bit of work to do on this thing. There's an event coming up here in Australia, and Canberra more specifically, called Summer Nats. It is currently mid-November. Summer Nats kicks off, I think, on the 6th of January this year. And me mate Case, you know, we're going to be driving up from here. It's about an 8-hour drive. And I'd really, really like to take this thing. Because the only other car I have sort of running at the moment is a Nissan 180SX with a gutted interior, solid engine mounts, rose joint suspension arms, and it's a bumpy ride. It's also having fueling issues at the moment, and I have a fuel pump on the way, but it hasn't arrived yet. So we're going to be gunning it hard on this thing to get it going, to drive it up there for the Nats. It's not a short list of things to do. I think it's been in the country for about 20 years. It has been sitting for about 10 of those years. It was on a club rego. We're going to be putting it on a full registration, which means I need to get something called a roadworthy for it. To get a roadworthy in the state of Victoria, in Australia, it's a pretty sort of lengthy process. They aren't blasé about the whole thing. They really do pick over the whole rig. And I'm gonna, pretty safely assume, I think, that it needs a windscreen to pass a roadworthy. Not to say that I haven't driven it up and down the street without a windscreen. But, I ride bikes. I like having the wind in my mullet. Okay, so I've wanted a C10 ever since I saw the light and changed away from Ford F-150s over to the good old camp of Chevrolet. And I've just fallen in love with old square bodies. I think that they're just beautiful, big, simple, just rudimentary. It's a truck. There's nothing, these modern trucks, they go on about, fuel economy and the comforts and the beautiful, all the features and shit. Truck. Very, very simple. So the first step is to get this thing in the air, and I'm going to run you through a bit of a list of what it's needing. I am thinking it's going to need a lot of rubber bushings underneath, because when something sits for a long time, and just the age of this truck, all the rubber perishes and goes crack, bye. So we need to replace that with fresh stuff. And yeah, let's hop to it. Good to see you again. Levitate mod has been installed. Kind of looks cool at this height, to be honest. If it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to load bikes into the back of it, and also that I wouldn't be able to get it out of my driveway with my carport being as low as it is, this would be pretty cool. But it's also kind of a trend of the C10s to be having them on the ground. Also, this would be a good chance to introduce you to the third Chevy that I came into possession of recently. He's a little small block, and he's a 2022 model. Hey Chevy, come here. This is my boy, Chevy. Hey, Chevy. Hey, how you doing? Say good day to everyone. Good day. Whoop, whoop. This is, yeah, my pride and joy at the moment. The cheapest Chevy I ever bought. But, what are you doing under there? Want to go through my legs again? Okay, under you go. Cheapest Chevy I've ever bought, but by golly, he's the cutest. Aren't ya? Aren't ya? I have this little tag as well. See if we can get it. If you stop moving for a second. Whoop, whoop. That's my phone number. Don't read that one. Bowie. Want to say, give everyone a big kiss? Yeah, nice. Good work. All right, let's get to that list. And I'll introduce outfit change, I think number 3 for this video. I've been filming this thing all over the place. Had quite a few little customer jobs coming in that I've needed to get this out of the way for. And I've also been doing some work on the shop recently with my nephew Ingo and also a good friend and customer Olivia. We've been painting down here. So, been chucking a coat of white paint all along here and just finished this section here. I'm loving the way that it's looking. It makes the light go so much further. On a nice sunny day, I don't have to have the lights on down here at all, compared to what it used to look like. That's what I'm moving towards. Keeps the character of the garage. I didn't want to get rid of that. I really like the way that whoever it was put this together many moons ago, but it needed a fresh coat of paint. This way I can wipe it clean. Everything's really easy to find and see. And yeah, I dig it. All right, that's enough about the paint. Let's move on to the list of things that need to be done to the truck. I'll kick off with something that I've already done. When I picked up the truck, the front windscreen had a big old crack straight through the center of it, which was a real bummer because there was a sticker in the bottom right-hand corner that was a Parks Pass, National Parks Pass for South Dakota. I really liked having a little memento on the truck from its time in the States, but big old crack through the windscreen. And when I was kicking out the old windscreen, which was quite an experience, fun, but an experience, I put another crack straight through the middle of that sticker. So unfortunately I couldn't even sort of, paint scrape it off and save it. When I was taking out the rubber that surrounds the windscreen around here, I wanted to do a bit of a dig and see if there was any rust to be dealt with. There was a bit in this corner. I'm sorry that I didn't film the resurrection of it, but I just wanted to get straight to it. I'll put in some pictures now of the hole, and then the little piece that I made to fill it. So I welded that piece in, and then we were left with what we have here now. These little dents are just from the stock spot welds that fasten these two panels together. If this section was on the outside of the car, I would definitely be striving for a better finish than what we achieved here. There's a little dent right there. GoPros don't like to zoom in, so unfortunately I'm gonna have to see that one from a bit of a distance, but the shape is really what matters here. And I made a little cardboard piece and fit it to that corner, and then flipped it over here, and then made sure that we were dealing with exactly the same curve, because when we put the windscreen in, we don't want it to get stuck on this little bit here and potentially crack the windscreen again, or be too loose and then have a leak through here. So getting the windscreen installed is probably the only bit of labor that I'm going to be outsourcing on this truck, because I've never even seen a windscreen get installed before in person, and I certainly haven't done it myself. So I would like to watch an expert do it, and I'm going to either film or watch them like a hawk, take notes, just try and take in as much as I can so that in the future I can do it myself. But I really don't want to stuff it up when we're working on such a tight time frame. Hopefully I can get somebody here before Christmas when the whole world shuts down. Thankfully, that was the only bit of rust that we were dealing with around the windscreen. And here, it wasn't really that bad. The hole that I showed you was quite a bit bigger than the rust that I saw here, but I just really wanted to be sure that I'd gotten all of it because it's hard to get paint to the back side of this. I tried my best. Ooh, I wonder if they actually make, little hoses for paint cans that you can whoop-de-whoop around and paint the backside of things. If you know if they exist, let me know. So now moving to the inside of the truck. Oh, it feels good. It isn't even running, but it feels good. Also, car does start. Does run. And does move. So that's a big bonus, so I can move this thing out of the way when I have other cars coming in to get worked on, because I do not need another dead car on this property, especially one this big. And it being a truck, I can tell that the back would just fill up with everything that I'm trying to get rid of. So moving over to another thing that I've addressed already, the ignition barrel I had a key for, which was very handy so I could drive the car home. But that key did not work in the door locks. A little bit sus sometimes, but I checked it out and this car has a clean bill in this country. I was also very thankfully able to find at Classic Pickup Supplies. Also, if you're looking for parts for one of these or an old F truck, Classic Pickup Supplies up on the Sunshine Coast, fantastic. I dealt with Robin on the phone there. She was really lovely. And any parts that they didn't have in stock, she was right on to getting in contact with their suppliers and had them all send me parts individually. I got oodles of parts for this car already on my doorstep just a couple of days after I ordered them, which is really quite amazing for, you know, a 40-plus-year-old truck that was never sold in this country. So I was thankfully able to find matching barrels for the ignition and door locks and 4 spare keys. It was really easy to chuck them in the doors. Just had to take out these door cards and, you know, undo a little clip from behind. The ignition barrel was a completely different story. I think it was the year after this truck, they made it so it was just a little screw that you had to take out once you disassembled the whole ignition, the whole steering column. There was this section here. There was just a little screw that goes through there, which locks this barrel in place. With mine, there was a little spring-loaded tab that came out, which was an absolute pain in the butt to get out. But I did it. I got it back in there. And as often happens when you work on cars and too much time passes between when you take it all apart and you put it back together, it took me so long to figure out how to get this all back together. And now the horn don't work. I'm pretty sure I've put it back together incorrectly, because this doesn't even press in at the moment, and there should be at least a bit of spring going on there. There is definitely a connection from here in the way of a live wire and a ground that goes to the horn, because I accidentally connected them when I was putting the whole thing together, but I just don't have the mechanism for this horn put together correctly yet. If anybody has a bit of a diagram on how that goes together, that would be greatly appreciated, because I haven't been able to find one, and at the moment my options for this are just taking it apart and putting it back together until it goes beep beep. Also, may I say that this is quite possibly the worst steering wheel that I've ever had between my greasy mitts. It is somehow always sticky. I have cleaned it multiple times, but it just comes back sticky. It just feels gross. It also is, it's like a cast rubbery plastic, and it has this fake sort of twine wrap cast into it, and it's just a bad color. It doesn't match anything. I don't like the size of it. I'm not a fan of this steering wheel. I don't really like the stock ones. They're quite huge and they just have one bar going across the middle, but I'll find a nice, you know, Chevy one, maybe even one that sort of, you know, comes out a little bit. We'll see. Not important. I just need to be able to steer, and this one does it fine for now, but I'll be complaining a little bit about my sticky hands along the way. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see down here, but these don't have a handbrake, these trucks. They have something that's called a foot brake. You just push it down like that. This one definitely needs to be tightened up at the moment. It does not stop this truck rolling at all. Then you pull this to release it. Whoop. Come on, get back up there. I need to duck underneath the car and tighten all of that up. That is not a big job at all. I've just been stopping it on the hill of my driveway by putting it in park, but I would like to have a proper handbrake, foot brake working because it's a bit safer. Let's start getting to the suspension list. So down here we have something called the upper control arm or upper A arm. You can see why it's called an A arm. Shaped like an A. And you've got one down the bottom as well. That is the lower control arm or lower A arm. They are connected to the chassis through this big bolt that goes through here. And between that bolt and the A arm is this rubber bushing here. It has completely perished on my truck. Ditto on this side and ditto on the other side. So they are definitely going to have to be replaced. It is the same thing with the bushing down the bottom there. Also, looking at these shocks, we've got rust up the top of this shaft here. And the bushings look pretty well spent on those too. Might be able to get away with those, but I've actually ordered new shocks and it comes with new hardware and new bushings. So now, moving on to the steering components. This thing here is called a tie rod, and I don't know if you can tell here, but there's been a bit of a leak on this one. Yeah, that's pretty foul. Okay, so there's a little boot that goes down the bottom here that covers a ball and socket joint, and that ball and socket joint has grease all the way around it. When these boots go, that grease just leaks out. And what someone's done here is they've just, which I think the filling nipple is on the top, someone's just kept on cranking more and more and more and more grease in there. I'm hoping that the ball and socket joints are okay. We will find out when we get it all out and clean it up. This boot is definitely something else that is going to have to be replaced. I've actually cleaned up this section on the other side, and I'll show you what it looks like after. Yeah, that's what we want it to look like. Well, that still has the old boot on it, but that's it uncovered from all the crud. So we are going to need to replace these dust boots, which keep all the grease in there. And there are 1, 2, and then 3, 4 of them on the other side. Then we will need to refill these joints with grease with a grease gun through this nipple that would be up the top if it, oh wait, you can see the tip of it there. Yep, so we'll clean all that off just like we have done on the other side, and hopefully these ball and socket joints are still okay, or at least okay enough to do a road trip on. I will be replacing all of these components at some stage, but for now I just want to get them nice and safe and good enough to pass a roadworthy. Moving inwards, this thing here is called a sway bar. It makes it so that the wheels, the front wheels in this case, have a little bit of continuity between them. If this one hits a bump and gets raised, it will send that energy down here through a bar, and it fastens to the lower control arm on the other side so that it also does a bit of a whoop-dee. It is fastened to the lower control arm and the chassis of the car with these rubber bushings here, which you can also see are cracked. They will also not pass a roadworthy, and they will need to be replaced. So I got a little bit excited, and I've already done some digging on this side. As I showed you before, I've cleaned up this tie rod end joint. And I also had to take this brake caliper off because, hey, that huge piston there is not receding back into the caliper, which is kind of a common problem on older vehicles. I've had a few bikes where that has been the case. I'm gonna need to take all of this apart, clean it out, and see what we're dealing with in there. Sometimes there's a bit of rust either on this or on the cylinder of the cylinder bore of the caliper, and it means that this is just catching. It's pushing out fine. If I go press on the brake pedal, this will push out a little bit, but if I've used my sort of brake caliper spreaders on this, and by golly, I cranked on them and that thing is not receding back. So everything that I was listing that needed to be replaced on the other side, exactly the same goes over here. So it's new shocks, new upper and lower control arm bushings, new tie rod end dust boot covers, and sway bar link bushings. Yeah. So I've already gone ahead and ordered a bunch of those things. So this was all through Classic Pickup Supplies up on the coast, and another lovely little place over in Ballarat called American Suspension and Driveline Parts. On my doorstep the next day, upper and lower control arm bushes, which are right here, for 75 C10. It will continue to baffle me how easy it is to get parts for this car. And here we have the body mounts. Ooh, that's another thing I need to show you. Moving underneath the car. Yeah, it doesn't look great, does it? Alright, I'll just get this light stuck up here. There we go. So, the bit that I showed you just before is this rubber here, which mounts the chassis of the car. Sorry, the cab of the car, which is this section up here. That's where you sit up there, to the frame rail of the car, the chassis. Again, cracked and will need to be replaced. It also came with new bolts and hardware to put through there. And you might also notice this big gaping hole. For some reason, at some stage, you can see that there are angle grinder cuts through here. This was cut for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what component would have run through here that they needed extra clearance for. Anyway, I was very surprised I was able to find and have on my doorstep a few days later this whole brace, this whole piece here. I was sort of looking at potentially bending up a piece of sheet metal, hi Chevy, and welding it into place there, but no need, because they, well, that's, ooh, if this brace is ever going to tell a spooky campfire story, I have the lighting for it. So no need. I'm just going to have to cut all this back and wear a whole bunch of, you know, safety protection on my face so I don't fill every orifice with rust as I do that. You can also tell that somebody down here has done a pretty dodgy repair with fiberglass. This is a section that quite often rusts out on these cars. It's the same thing, if you can see it right over there on the other side. But they haven't done the dodgy repair on that side, which I'm actually quite happy about, because it means that I don't need to take out all the fiberglass before I can repair it. But here, I'm going to need to cut all this section out, grind it flat, dress this metal so it's all back to bare metal. A lot of this is just surface rust. I'm hoping it's just surface rust. We will find out when we start digging, and then I'm going to weld in the new brace there. And then all this section will be nice and pretty again. I've also got new rubber bushings for the back. You can see that one up there. Ka-choo! So if I keep shimmying underneath the car, you can see that I've already put in new shocks in the rear. They came with new hardware as well. And also, we will notice that or maybe you won't be able to notice, just through there, you might see that little cracked piece of rubber. I'll circle it right now. This fastens the front of the leaf spring suspension to the chassis of the car. That will also need to be replaced. So there's one point at the front, and there's actually 2 points at the back. There's sort of that one on top, there, and one on the bottom, there. They will also need to be replaced. Another thing that I'm going to have to address are these, this is the exhaust coming out here. This is what the exhaust is hanging off, which looks like a clothes hanger that's been bent around there. But really, it just needs to be re-welded. See, there's a little just break in it there. So I'll take off this whole section and re-weld that. That's not a big fix to be done. I've also already made a new brake line for this section here. This one, I was trying to undo. I do apologize for the light under here. I'm sort of doing the best I can. So I was trying to undo this section here because we weren't getting a flow of brake fluid through this line and then out the bleeder nipple. So I had to take it all apart and rebuild that cylinder. But in doing that, when I was taking off that little plug right there, oh, thank you, Chevy. And Big Bird. Mate, go outside. Go outside. You're very cute, but yeah, I'm trying to film. he thinks that I want to play. Hey, 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 under the truck. Okay. Oh, that was a bit mean. Are you gonna get it? Yeah, nice work. Okay, so I was trying to undo this sort of, all right, I'm gonna put Chevy out. So I was trying to undo this little feed line here, and it just snapped the brake line right here. So I got to make my first ever brake line, and I'm actually quite happy with how it came out. Not a very intricate piece to start off with, but that was pretty handy. Doesn't touch anywhere, shouldn't rub. Yeah, pretty chuffed with that one. There also seems to be, as you can see down there, a bit of an oil leak, which is not surprising in the slightest. Let's show you the engine bay of this thing. Alright, come on. 350 small block is what this truck came with. I'm very, very chuffed about. It also has a turbo 350 automatic transmission behind it. There is a whole lot of oil coming from both of those things. So I'm gonna have to clean down quite a bit in here and do, you know, wash the whole thing with brake cleaner and then run it for a while and trying to find out where these oil leaks are coming from. I'm hoping that the oil isn't leaking from a crack in either the engine or the transmission, and it's just some old gaskets that have gone bad, or maybe it's the sump needs to be re-siliconed or something like that. Either way, I'm gonna get in there and clean it all down, run it, and find out where it's coming from. So that just about wraps up the list of what I'm going to be attacking before my first attempt at a roadworthy. I've already got quite a few of the components here in my hot little hands, so I'm just going to get straight to work. As I work on all these bits too, like when I do the blower control arm and such, I'm going to be cleaning them all up and chucking the coated paint on them. I just don't want this rust going any further, and I would like whoever does the roadworthy to look under here and be like, ooh, this kid knows what he's doing. So that's going to be in the next video, but in this one I just wanted to introduce the Chevys and give you a bit of a rundown. Alright, good to have you back in the shop, guys. Stay safe.